Well, welcome everyone to the September 15th, 2020 Ogden City Council meeting. Please let the record reflect that all council members are present, two being just on the phone, but doesn't make that big of a difference here in the Zoom world, but hopefully they'll be able to join us in the conversation. So first off, I'm going to read the council chair determination to hold electronic meetings without anchor location. So in accordance with Utah Code 52.3.2074, I have determined that conducting meetings of the Ogden City Council with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present due to the infectious nature and potentially dangerous health effects of contracting the COVID-19 virus. This determination is based on the following. Utah has been in a declared state of emergency due to the novel coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19 since March 6, 2020. The World Health Organization has characterized the spread of COVID-19 as a pandemic. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, or the CDC, has determined that COVID-19 is easily spread between or among people who are in close contact with each other through airborne respiratory droplets and may be spread by people who are non-symptomatic. Federal, state, and local health authorities recommend limiting public gatherings, wearing face masks, and following social distancing guidelines. Currently, physical distancing measures are difficult to set up and maintain in the City Council chambers. Although case counts have been declining, there is some concern that cases may increase as a result of K-12 schools and universities returning to in-person classes. The Council is evaluating a plan to return to the chambers that includes health and safety protocols to ensure the well-being of those in attendance. This plan will be implemented as soon as it is deemed prudent. However, until such time, based on the foregoing, all public meetings, including work sessions and meetings of the Redevelopment Agency, will be held electronically through September 30th, 2020. Information on how to connect to the electronic public meetings will be posted on each agenda. The public may comment during the electronic meeting during hearings or provide public input on items designated for input on the agenda. General public comments will also be taken during regular meetings. Written public comments may also be submitted through the following electronic options: telephonic message at 801-629-8158, or public comment submission form at ogdencity.com/public input, or email at citycouncil@ogdencity.com. This statement is issued and becomes effective September 1st, 2020.
I'm going to change this up a little bit. Sorry.
Okay. Who was that? Oh, maybe it was an accident. Okay, great. We'll invite Vice Chair Blair to do the Pledge of Allegiance for us.
Okay, thank you, Chair Chaburka. I would ask that all council members and those joining us would stand and repeat with us or at home the Pledge of Allegiance. So. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and please now join me in a moment of silence.
I'm not sure how that looks on paper. Whatever.
Thank you all so much. We're very excited this evening to have two recognitions on the agenda, the first being the Hispanic Heritage Month Joint Proclamation. And we have several visiting guests accepting this recognition. We have Elohio Alejandre, member of the Latinos United Promoting Education and Civic Engagement, or LUPEC. We have Cirilo Franco, Americans Coming Together for Immigrants in Ogden and Nationwide, or ACTION, and Anna Jane Arroyo with Image Day Northern Utah. So first, I believe Councilmember Heyer will read the proclamation in English, and then Councilmember Lopez has offered to read it in Spanish.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My Spanish is really bad, so I appreciate Councilmember Lopez taking care of the Spanish part, and we'll allow him to make the motion at the end of all of this. But let me start by declaring September 15th to October 15th, 2020, Hispanic Heritage Month in Ogden City. Whereas throughout the history of Ogden, people have come from all parts of the globe to call our community home. This rich diversity provides a community character that is distinctive from all other cities in Utah. Having a diverse population enriches our community and serves as one of our greatest assets. And whereas the individual and families who are Hispanic, Latino, and live in Ogden have a profound and positive influence on the community through their strong commitment to family, faith, hard work, and service. They enhance and shape our local character with traditions that reflect their multi-ethnic and multicultural backgrounds. And whereas the Hispanic and Latino people of Ogden strengthen our community and bring much promise to our future through their significant cultural, social, economic, and charitable contributions. Hispanic Heritage Month celebrates the histories, culture, and contributions of residents whose ancestors came from Mexico, Central and South America, Spain, and the Caribbean. And whereas in 1968, the United States Congress and President Lyndon B. Johnson passed the first resolution to celebrate Hispanic Heritage Week, this was later expanded by President Ronald Reagan to include a month-long celebration from September 15th to October 15th. These dates were selected to coincide with the Independence Day of 8 countries: Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Mexico, Chile, and Belize. And whereas this commemorative month honors the influence and impact of Hispanics and Latinos in all spheres of society, commemorating Hispanic Heritage Month gives each of us an opportunity to take pride in these roots and help to promote the rich and the diversity that these cultures have to offer. Now, therefore, the Ogden City Council and Mayor Michael P. Caldwell hereby proclaim September 15th to October 15th, 2020, Hispanic Heritage Month in Ogden City. We express our sincere gratitude and recognition for the Latinos United Promoting Education and Civic Engagement, LUPEC, Americans Coming Together for Immigrants in Ogden, and nationwide, Image, the Northern Utah, and all others within our community who are working to embrace Hispanic Latino cultures and improve immigration integration.
Okay. Chair, would you like me to go ahead now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, well, it's a pleasure and an honor to read this proclamation in Spanish. And so, without further ado, esta es una proclamación conjunta del Consejo de la Ciudad de Ogden y el alcalde, declarando el 15 de septiembre al 15 de octubre del 2020 el mes de la herencia hispana en la ciudad de Ogden. Mientras que a lo largo de la historia de Ogden la gente ha venido de todas partes del mundo para llamar a nuestra casa la comunidad. Excuse me. Esta rica diversidad proporciona un carácter de la comunidad que se distingue de todas las otras ciudades en Utah. Tener una población diversa enriquece nuestra comunidad y sirve como uno de nuestros mayores activos. Y mientras los individuos y las familias que son hispano-latina y viven en Ogden tienen una influencia profunda y positiva en nuestra comunidad a través de su firme compromiso con la familia, la fe, el trabajo duro y el servicio, mejoran y dan forma a nuestro carácter local con las tradiciones que reflejan sus orígenes multiétnicos y multiculturales. Y mientras que los hispanos y latinos de Ogden fortalecen nuestra comunidad y traen mucha promesa a nuestro futuro a través de sus contribuciones culturales, sociales y económicas y de caridad son muy significativas. El mes de la Hispanidad celebra las historias culturales y las contribuciones de los residentes cuyos antepasados vinieron de México, Centro y Sudamérica, España y el Caribe. Y mientras que en 1968 el Congreso de los Estados Unidos y el presidente Lyndon B. Johnson aprobó la primera resolución para celebrar la Semana de la Herencia Hispana. Más tarde fue ampliado por el presidente Ronald Reagan para incluir una celebración de un mes, del 15 de septiembre al 15 de octubre. Estas fechas fueron seleccionadas para coincidir con el Día de la Independencia de 8 países: Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, México, Chile y Belice. Y mientras que este mes conmemorativo rinde homenaje a la influencia y el impacto de los hispanos y latinos en todas las esferas de la sociedad, conmemorando el mes de la Hispanidad nos da a cada uno la oportunidad de enorgullecerse de estas raíces y para ayudar a promover la rica diversidad que estos cultivos tienen que ofrecer. Por lo tanto, el Ayuntamiento de Ogden y el alcalde Michael P. Caldwell presentan y esta proclamación del 15 de septiembre al 15 de octubre del 2020, el mes de la herencia hispana, en la ciudad de Ogden. Expresamos nuestra sincera gratitud y reconocimiento para LUPEC, para Image y para Action, y para todos los demás dentro de nuestra comunidad que están trabajando para abrazar las culturas hispano-latinas y mejorar la integración de los inmigrantes. Thank you.
Chair, I will be happy to make a motion then that we adopt this joint proclamation declaring September 15th through October 15th Hispanic Heritage Month in Ogden City.
Second.
Second.
Fantastic. We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, and was that a second? I'm not sure who it was.
Councilmember Blair made the second along with somebody else. I don't know who.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Sometimes I don't see the square fast enough, and it was exactly the same moment. So we'll say we have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Vice Chair Blair to approve this proclamation. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Well, fantastic. Thank you both for reading that, and thanks so much to our guests. I'm wondering, I don't know if I see Anna Jane on. Do you see her, Brandon?
I do not, but I'm wondering if she's on a different account, like Stephanie, are you aware? If
She's actually under Stephanie Ware, her daughter.
Oh, perfect.
there we go, that's the one. That's what I thought. Okay, I'll get her on just a second.
We'll get her on too. So Elagio and Franco, usually we would, do big clapping and shaking your hands and take pictures. And we really wish that we could do that with you all, but we appreciate you attending as it is. Would you like to make a statement at all?
I had just a couple of things, if you wouldn't mind.
Please.
Members of the City Council, city administrators, and others present, on behalf of Latinos United Promoting Education and Civic Engagement, thank you for your recognition of our community. That's how we see it. Thank you, too, for your efforts in bringing everyone together in various activities, such as the Strategic Planning Committee, where you included some of us in that committee, the consortium working on improving police relations currently, and other worthwhile events in the city of Ogden. It takes bold leadership to address issues that may not be of high interest to the larger community at large. If we all continue to do our part, we will avoid huge stories that make the news statewide and nationally. In these times, that can be called a success. In the meantime, let us all work together for a better future in Ogden. Thank you so much for the recognition.
Thank you. Franco, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, I don't have a prepared statement, but thank you for taking the time to recognize a big, important part of our community. This has been, Angela, I know you mentioned that you couldn't believe it was already mid-September. A lot of us already wish that this year was over with, but, unfortunately, we don't have the celebrations, the activities that we would typically have in September because of COVID-19. However, we are working in partnership with Voto Latino in increasing voter registration across Ogden and Weber County. We're also working with Nurture the Creative Mind on their Dia de los Muertos event that will still occur in the November timeframe. But most importantly, thank you all for taking the time to recognize this coming month as Latino Heritage Month in Ogden.
Thank you. And will that event still be in person, or is it virtual, or how is that coming about?
Stay tuned.
Okay. Thank you. And Jane, would you like to make a statement at all?
Yes, I would. Thank you. I would like to just express our appreciation on behalf of Image the Northern Utah for the support, the continued support that we receive from Ogden City Council. We appreciate each one of you. We really do. We appreciate the mayor and the other representatives. We appreciate the fact that we now have the Diversity Commission back in place. We appreciate the fact that you've supported us, our communities in expanding the Cesar Chavez signs along with the MLK signs in Ogden. That was a long time coming, and we appreciate your support in that areas. We have been dialoguing and working with the NAACP along with other representatives of the community and organizations, LUPEC, Action, with dialoguing with the chief of police. As we all know, we're just facing some very challenging times when it comes to police and community relations. And we hope that our interactions and our participation in that and those conversations will result in just a stronger community and healthy community relations with our Latino, Latinx, Hispanic communities in Ogden City Police Department. We're also working with Weber State University. We've established a consortium of organizations to work closely with Weber State. As you all know, we had a situation with one of the professors there, made headlines. We reached out to the president, and we have, we believe, made some strides there. And so we're working closely there. Image the Northern Utah is primarily involved with advocating for education, access and equity there, and employment issues. Of course, we address all kinds of issues, and we work closely with our partners in the community, LUPEC and Action, of course. And the Diversity Commission is also working with us. Some of your representatives are actually part of our consortium, and we appreciate that as well. Just a note that I want to express to you is that the Latino Hispanic community is quite concerned with the existence and continued support of the Council for the Marshall White Center. There is nothing below Washington for our children and our youth. And we need your support. I don't know if you've made a trip there or visited before COVID, but if you ever have, that's a place where our children go and parents rely on. They draw the people together. People depend, and it's not just people of color. It's our people who are economically challenged. They can't afford to go long far or to Cherry Hill or any other place. That's where they go. And so that's a concern of ours. I think that Eulogio and Cirillo would support that. And so we are just hopeful that you will keep that in mind as you make your planning and your budgets, that we need the Marshall White Center. We need it. We hope that you recognize that. And we hope that you take and keep in mind how important that center it is to our communities below Monroe. We need your support. And again, thank you for the ongoing support that you've given us.
Yeah, thank you all so much. And I just have to, make a comment that I just have appreciated getting to know you all. You spend so much time and effort along with all the folks that are involved in your efforts, just trying to improve the community, and that certainly is appreciated. Would any other council members like to make a comment?
Chair, if I may, I just want to echo Anna Jane's comments. I want to thank her Neologio and Franco for being here, helping represent the Hispanic and Latinx community. And I couldn't agree with her more about her comments about Marshall White. And so just really looking forward to continue our conversations. I know that there's a study underway to evaluate the future and get recommendations on the best way to move forward. But Anna Jane, just as a comment, many people on the council have been very forceful and very outspoken about basically what you just said. We've been very outspoken with the administration, letting them know that the Marshall White is, as you said, of extremely important to the community. So I just wanted to echo those comments and thank you for making them, and letting you know that at some point, if we need to get together and talk a little more about these and see in what ways we can coordinate, collaborate, and even help the administration with future planning and including our friends from NAACP and like you said, other communities of need. Looking forward to that opportunity. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, thank you again, all of you, for attending our meeting virtually. Great. Next up, we have the reading of a proclamation to raise awareness about Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And we're lucky to invite Margaret Rose, the Executive Director at Your Community Connection of Ogden, and Paige Davies from Weber State University's Women's Center to accept this proclamation. And Councilmember White will read it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I am honored to read this joint proclamation. I can't believe it's October, or almost October again, but this is a joint proclamation declaring October 2020 Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Ogden City. Whereas domestic violence has affected members of our community and individuals throughout the world. Sadly, many victims of this horrific crime suffer in silence because they are afraid to seek help. It is crucial that members of our community feel safe and comfortable seeking help when needed. And whereas it is estimated that more than 10 million people experience domestic violence every year. While domestic violence is known primarily as physical abuse, it has many other forms, including emotional, sexual, financial, or psychological. It can cause long-term trauma to individuals of every gender, sexual orientation, race, religion, culture, and socioeconomic status. And whereas since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, Utah has seen an increase of reports of domestic violence and abuse. A contributing factor to the increase in more people are staying at home. Although home is a sanctuary for most of us, it can be most dangerous place for victims of domestic violence. And whereas Domestic Violence Awareness Month is nationally recognized every October and first began by the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence as a day of unity to connect women's advocates across the country. This month is an opportunity to help our community promote and protect safety and freedom of all who seek refuge from this terrible crime. And whereas your community connection, YCC of Ogden, and the Weber State University Women's Center are dedicated to help victims of domestic violence by providing advocacy, education, services, and resources. Through their programs, individuals and families can feel a sense of hope, safety, and protection. And whereas Ogden City encourages members of the community to work together to increase domestic violence awareness. Doing so will enable members of our community to feel safe and secure. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Ogden City Council and Mayor Michael P. Caldwell hereby proclaim October 2020 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month in Ogden City. We encourage residents, schools, businesses, and community groups to recognize the importance of domestic violence awareness. We appreciate the efforts of YCC of Ogden, Weber State University's Women's Center, and all other institutions and organizations that encourage domestic violence awareness throughout our community. And with that, I would like to adopt the joint proclamation declaring October 2020 Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
I'll second it.
I have a motion by Councilmember White and a second by Councilmember Stevens to adopt the proclamation. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And thank you so much for joining us, Margaret and Paige. Like I was just saying with the last proclamation, normally we would have a handshake and a photo and some time together, but we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. Would you like to say anything, Margaret?
Oh, sure. Thank you, Chair Choburka. I appreciate the proclamation, and thank you, Council Member White, and Mayor Caldwell. I can appreciate that proclamations generally, they run the gamut, certainly from celebratory to challenging, and that the City Council is willing to not sort of dismiss the challenging ones and actually take those on and help us raise awareness speaks volumes, frankly. And I appreciate that partnership and the courage that the council has shown and that the city has shown through this particularly challenging time right now. I think the city are certainly our OPD partners, you city officials. We've all seen the direct effects of domestic violence earlier this year with the death of Officer Lydé. And so we know firsthand, you all know firsthand the toll that this takes on a community, and being willing to work together and really step up and try to find solutions to the issues is what we all need to work on. And it's partners like Paige with the Women's Center at Weber State, our police departments, with the LAP training that is going on that's critically important. And each one of you, we really, that's what's going to make a change in the city. So we've all heard that the pandemic has certainly exacerbated domestic violence, and it's sort of been anecdotal out there. And I want to give you just one stat that might illustrate sort of the gravitas of the issues that we're seeing. And I talk a lot about the toll that particularly of late that it's taken on our staffing. Not only the volume of calls and the demand on services, but the toll that it's taken on staff. So through the first 3 quarters of the year, so July 1 to June 30 of 2019 into 2020, for the first quarter, we had about 760 calls to our crisis lines. So that was July, August, September last year. Quarter two, we had 613 calls to our crisis line. The third quarter that included March, it bumped up to 891. But our fourth quarter from April, May, and June, we had 2,393 calls to our crisis line. So that's not a little bump. That is threefold, fourfold. My math is not great, but I know that's really significant. And I think that it's not just the number of calls, the volume certainly, but each one of those calls represents a person, and that person needs support and case management and help. Sometimes they just need a referral. Sometimes they need a police officer, so it runs the gamut. They need safety and shelter and services, counseling, health, all that is a full package, a full complement of services that we provide. And Paige is in the same situation at Weber State. So it's no longer anecdotal. It's real. It's profound, and it takes all of us to make a difference. So we are October's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we're not unique in Ogden to the increase in numbers. We've seen it statewide, and so our partner shelters statewide, our sister shelters are partnering together to have a virtual event on October 17th to try to do a statewide awareness raising. And I believe, and Danette can chime in, and maybe Paige, it's stoptheviolenceutah.org. And we'll be live streaming from YCC at 7:00 on October 17th, the event, just trying, and we'd like help spreading that message on social media and so on. So we can definitely get more information out, and it'll be shared on our Facebook page and so on. So I appreciate the commitment of the city and the ongoing commitment of the city, truly. I know the mayor cares deeply about this, and Mark, and they've been very, very supportive, and the council, thank you. So I do want to take a second to recognize two of our staff members who are listening. I don't know if Brandon gave them speaking privileges or not, but Danette Stanger and Lisa Blake have been, they manage our shelter and our victim assistance center, and they have been steady through the pandemic virtually every day at the center. So I just want to recognize their efforts. And anyway, they're great people to ask if you have questions, because I can only answer about half.
Well, thank you so much, Margaret. I know that YCC is a not-for-profit organization in our community. What are things that community members could do to help support your organization? Obviously, there's such a huge uptick. I don't know, you're probably not having volunteers now, but what are some things community members could do to help support?
Yeah, thank you. We have a wish list on our website. And so we always are willing to take donations. Obviously, it costs a lot of money to provide as many services as we do. So we're always looking for financial assistance and financial support. I think if you have a business or a skill set or a way that you can help us share information and help raise awareness, that's always great. But I also, it's that old adage that if you see something, say something. Don't let, trust your gut and speak up. And if your friends need help, if you need help, reach out. There's a lot of support available through YCC, through Women's Center at Weber State. We're really the only providers in Weber County, and one of the only in all of Northern Utah. And so reach out. That's what you can do to make a difference.
Great, thank you. And Paige, would you like to make some comments from the Weber State Women's Center?
Yeah, I don't think I can say anything better or more than what Margaret shared about stats for the county or for the city. Those are pretty alarming. I think that if it just goes to show the good work that YCC does, that also that many people know and trust them to be able to reach out in their moments of need. So I think that speaks volumes to the work of YCC and the work in everybody of getting victims and survivors help and a place to go. On campus, the Women's Center serves all students and employees of the university, and we provide services to survivors of sexual assault, domestic violence, dating violence, stalking, sexual harassment. Sometimes with our students, they might not call what they're experiencing domestic violence, that those might not be terms that resonate with them, but that is what they're experiencing within relationships. And so we provide confidential advocacy for students and employees at Weber State, some who live on campus, but the vast majority of the students who go to Weber don't live on campus, and they're within the community. And we really grateful for partners like YCC to help us provide holistic services to them. I would also want to thank our partners on campus. So we have our university partners, Office of Affirmative Action and Equal Opportunity, Weber State Police, our counseling department, Dean of Students, Legal Services, HR, and really just a whole slew of dedicated students who help us in doing prevention education and reaching out to people to let them know that support is there. Weber State right now has students on campus, we have students online, we have them in virtual spaces. And so I just would reassure people that though school and university looks different this year, we are still here and we're still serving students and still providing the same level of victim services to folks. We will be participating on October 17th with the statewide campaign against domestic violence. And then we also have an event on October 21st that we'll put out on our social media that's a virtual film fest. And we use funds from that to give money directly to survivors on our campus to help them with small expenses that they might not be able to cover. Every year we give out thousands of dollars directly to our students to say, here's some money, how can we buy you a gift card for gas or food for your pet or food for your kids. So that is our annual fundraiser, and we're holding it this October. And it's called Luna Fest, and more details will be available on our social media. But I think that's all I have to say. A big thank you to you all, and a big thank you to Margaret, YCC, and Lisa and Danette for all of their work.
Yes, thank you both so much. And I do see that Lisa and Danette are on the panel now. I'm not sure if you want to say a quick hi, but we do really appreciate all of your service to the community.
Well, thank you. I will just be very brief in sharing my sentiments. Thank you to Ogden City. You guys support us during Domestic Violence Awareness Month, but you support us all year long by showing up and supporting us and doing the hard work and making the work that we do possible. So thank you so much.
Hi. I don't know how much more I can add. Hi, Angela. It's been so long, huh? Anyway, I just really appreciate Ogden City's commitment to domestic violence awareness and the safety of all of its residents. I can't really add much more than what Margaret Rose, Danette, and Paige have said, but I just appreciate it so much. Thank you.
Thank you. I saw that the mayor popped on. Did you want to make some comments, Mayor? Oh, I think you're on mute.
I am on mute.
There you go.
But I'd just like to add my gratitude. Margaret, you've done a great job there, and we can't thank you enough for what you do and your patience and consistency and everything else. Thank you all so much for the services you provide to those that need it so much. And this has been an exceptional year for people. For everybody on the Brady Bunch screen, but for you guys especially, and we want to thank you for that. And you have 100% of our support.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Would any council members like to make comment?
I'll just add my thanks. I have been really quite worried about the circumstances this year that have caused the rise in domestic violence. It's nice to hear the statistic, because I knew it was exponentially greater, but I had no idea how bad it was. And I appreciate those of you who are at the front lines and manage this. Thank you so much.
Well, that's Danette and Lisa. And like I said, they have been there virtually every day, 24/7. So they and the staff at YCC, we've rotated, we've staggered, we've flip-flopped, we've done everything possible to keep our staff safe and healthy, and our clients safe and healthy. And it's been amazing, but we keep dodging the COVID bullet every week. We're like, oh, there was another close call. So we're hanging in there. But those two right there have done the heavy lifting, the lion's share, all the metaphors that you want to use. They've been great. So, and we appreciate all of you. So
if I could just add, Margaret, we're all in this together. We totally feel that. Our police department feels it. Our fire department feels it. All the council members feel it. I mean, it's been an exceptional year, and leadership matters. And having you there really is a big deal. And we want you to know how much we appreciate that.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Thank you all so much. Have a good evening.
I want to do clapping and cheering and yay.
Yeah. Circle of applause.
All right, we're just gonna
round of applause.
Yeah, go ahead. Do it while I find my agenda. Perfect time.
Round of applause. Yay.
Hey, Chair, before we leave recognitions, if I could say just a thing or two.
Sure.
Last year we had a recognition of Constitution Day, which is the 17th of September. In the fog of the calendar this year, it snuck up on us and we didn't get it on there. But I think it is an important document that we need to review and revisit once in a while. I hope that sometime in the next little while, we can revisit that document, and individually we can read it and see what's in it and what's not. It is the foundation of all of our laws. I think it's important that we pay attention to it. And interestingly enough, there is Hillsdale College teaches a free online course for the Constitution. You can go to hillsdalecollege.com, I think, and sign up for that for free. And I would encourage people to do that. I didn't want to let it get away. It's in 2 days. And so I just wanted to mention that. There's nothing to make a motion for, but I just wanted to make a shout out for our great Constitution.
You bet. Thank you. Okay, up next on the agenda, we have a common consent item, the continuing of the state of emergency. Janine, did you want to say anything about that, or we're just going to do the roll call?
Not unless there's any questions.
No, we talked a little bit in the work session. Any questions? Okay, great.
Chair, I'd make a motion that we adopt our common consent agenda as listed in our agenda.
Second.
Thank you. Oh, I love it. I love it when there's competition for seconding. We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer, and I believe it was a second by Vice Chair Blair, with a close third by Councilmember White, but we'll just go with the first one this time.
My internet must be slow.
Yeah, next time I'll let you go first. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair.
Aye.
Chair Chaburka.
Aye, and that passes. Thank you. Now we have a couple of public hearings. The first public hearing is the fiscal year 2020 to 2021 budget amendment for the Homeless Services Advocate, and Lisa Stout, our City Comptroller, will be presenting.
Chair Chaburski, I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
And is that presentation okay?
Yeah, I mean, it's the one where it has like the slideshow thing, but I think we can all read it.
Okay. It's the ordinance before you tonight for consideration is to appropriate an additional $114,250 to the city budget to fund a temporary full-time position for a homeless services advocate for a period of 18 months. The City Police Department received a grant through the United Way of Northern Utah on behalf of the Alliance for the Detriment of Health. The position of homeless services advocate provides coordination between healthcare, behavioral health, and social service organizations to address social determinant needs and provide more sustainable continuum of care. The goal is to use a holistic process that addresses both individual and community needs when engaging with the homeless population. The advocate will work with police and fire personnel to visit locations for these high-risk individuals, to educate and assist in connecting to support in healthcare services and housing needs. The object is to bridge the gap in social needs, deal with criminal violations, and address medical needs in the community before they become severe. The annual cost of this position is approximately $76,000 a year, $47,000 for wages and the rest for benefits. The total cost of $114,250 is a result of appropriating the entire grant amount for a year and a half of this position. Do you have any questions regarding this budget opening?
Chair Chaburka?
Yes.
I apologize for my oversight of bringing this up before the item came up, but I don't know if there's any conflict of interest with me participating on this item or not, because I'm on the board of United Way. I don't see why it would be, because we're not the one appropriating the funds, we're accepting them. But if there is any way that maybe someone from if Janine, or if there is someone from administration, an attorney that would like to maybe offer a suggestion, I would probably I just wanted to just put that out for transparency.
I might be able to answer that, Councilmember Lopez, just part of it anyway, because I was going to mention once again with this, I work for the Alliance for Determinants of Health. And in this particular case, I don't feel there's a conflict of interest for myself because I was not involved in the decision making for the funds. It's a charitable contribution that was given to the community on behalf of Intermountain Healthcare. And there's a local steering committee that makes the decision about putting the funding recommendation forward, which I am not allowed to vote on. And then it goes to a state level advisory committee, which then approves the funding. And then United Way of Northern Utah is just the fiscal agent, so they don't make any final decisions or vote on that final funding in any way. So for me, I don't think I need to recuse myself because I have no financial or no influence on that vote. But I'll let the legal counsel also mention what they think.
Actually, unless I feel comfortable staying in, because that was my feeling at the beginning. So unless someone has some strong feelings on something they want to say, I think we're perfectly fine to move forward.
Janine's shaking her head. I know, it's a lot of explanation just to say we have nothing to do with how it gets decided. Oh, there's Gary. Did you have a comment, Gary?
No, I think you're proceeding fine.
Thank you. We really appreciate your advice.
You bet.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Lisa before we open up for public comment?
So Lisa, just really quick, I just want to clarify. You clarified it, and Amy did in our work session. But this is an 18-month position We're funding the whole, or it is getting funded at $114,000. But that's not a 12-month salary. That's a 18-month salary. I just wanted to clarify that because there was some confusion, and I know some constituents had reached out. The other comment is that this is not an ongoing funding. We don't have any funding source after the 18 months. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So we would have to take action if we wanted to continue that position or add that position. Is that a position that's added now into the, no, it's just a, okay.
Yep, it is just funded by the grant. Council would have to include it in the staffing document to continue funding it.
But you kind of broke up. Say that again.
Council would need to add it to the staffing document.
Thank you.
To continue funding after the grant expires.
All right. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify because we did have some people reach out to us. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And it is possible that it could continue to be funded by that fund as well if the community advisory board recommended it. Okay, any other questions before we open up for the public hearing? Thank you all. I know it gets a little confusing. Great. Brandon, would you mind telling people how they might participate?
Not at all. So for those of you who are joining us via Zoom, you can participate in this public hearing regarding this item. And to do so, you would use the raise hand feature, which can be found at the bottom of your screen. And we don't have anybody joining us via telephone, so I won't bother explaining that. So with that, we will start with Angel Castillo. The time is yours. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and state your name for the record.
Good evening, City Council. Angel Castillo. I just wanted to voice my support and encourage the council members to reach out directly to Chief Watt for having the vision to work with a community member to consider new ideas, looking at our crisis with mental health and unsheltered individuals in needs of service, and bring on someone to part-time do something and getting results, and then making the effort to go full-time. It's something that we should be really, really proud of as far as our police department is concerned, and proud of the people that are doing that work. And I hope to make sure that the council acknowledges the work that's being done for the police department in that particular area, as we've got a lot of challenges that we're looking at. And I'm hopeful that the chief will continue to take that working with the community and considering new ways of doing things for public safety. Thank you.
Thanks, Angel. Any other public comments?
Chair, seeing no more raised hands, I will make a motion that we close the public hearing.
Thank you. We have a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay.
And a second. And we have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember White. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Sorry, I spoke too soon. Thank you. And I just want to acknowledge that our Diversity Commissioner, Jeremy Shinoda, is on the line too. I really appreciate him attending our meeting. Great, so unless there's more discussion about this item, I'd be happy to consider any motions.
Chair, I'll make a motion then that we adopt proposed ordinance 2020-38.
I second that.
Love it. We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer. I'm not sure, was that a second by Councilmember Stevens?
Right.
So.
Thank you. I thought it might be to approve ordinance 2020-38, and this is also a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair,
Aye.
Chair Chaburka.
Aye, and that passes. Thank you. Yes, and I also really appreciate Chief Watt and the department for, really trying something innovative out in the community to help serve the people here. Next, we have a presentation about the CARES Act grant funding for fiscal year 2020 to 2021, and it's a budget amendment and also an interlocal agreement. So we'll do presentations first, and then the public hearing, and then the action items.
Chair, I would like to recuse myself from this part of the discussion in as much as I have a small business that has been affected by the COVID pandemic. And so I will wait for a text message to get back on this meeting. So bye for now.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Heyer. We'll let you know. So I guess just for the, if anybody's watching or listening, in our council rules and norms, if you recuse yourself from an item, then you usually would leave the chambers while we're discussing the item or the workroom. But in this case, we just leave the Zoom meeting and then join back up once the item is finished.
Thank you, Chair Chaburka. I appreciate the opportunity to address the council this evening. The ordinance and resolution before you for consideration this evening relates to Ordinance 2020-40 to appropriate $5,598,675 to the city budget to recognize additional funding from the CARES Act, and to adopt Resolution 2020-25 to enter into an interlocal cooperative agreement with Weber County, allowing the city to source up to $3 million of county coronavirus relief funds to award additional CARES Act funds to businesses and not-for-profits within Ogden City.
So Lisa, I'm not sure, sometimes you're kind of going in and out a little bit, but I don't know what's happening because it doesn't seem like you're moving anywhere or anything. So I don't know what's happening exactly. You might need to repeat just like the last portion of that sentence.
I apologize. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it seems fine. And like I said, it doesn't seem like you're moving or anything. Just suddenly it kind of fades out.
This is also to allow the city to enter into an interlocal agreement with Weber County, allowing the city to source up to $3 million of county coronavirus relief funds to award additional CARES Act funds to businesses and not-for-profits within Ogden City and Weber County. The budget opening proposal is to fund 50% of the second distribution from the state of Utah to city expenditures. That would be just under $1.3 million, and 50% of the grant from the state directly to the city to the CARES Act Business Grant Program. The second distribution from the state of Utah is a total of $2,598,695. The first distribution of the same amount was adopted by the council in the fiscal year 21 budget, with $1.3 million planned for city expenditures and $1.3 million planned for business grants. Funding must be spent by December 30th, and existing funds that have been appropriated by council have already been committed or spent. The third award of the Coronavirus Relief Fund directly to the city should be awarded the end of September, 1st of October, and will be based on the city's ability to spend awarded funds. So we are anxious to get this budget opening appropriated so that we can continue with the programs authorized by council. The city council authorized the Coronavirus Relief Fund Business Grant Program on June 23rd. These grants are being reviewed and awarded by Business Development and the BIC, the Business Information Center staff. Nonprofit awards have been included in this program. They are using Zoom grant applications to accept grants and also using a grant loan committee to review the underwriting and award the grants. From round one, the city awarded a total of 64 grants, 51 to for-profit entities and 13 to nonprofit organizations. The total awarded was $4.1 million with an average award of $64,000. The current proposal before you is to appropriate an additional $1.3 million added to the existing budget of $1.3 million and the county funds of $3 million. That brings total funding under this grant program to $5,598,694. Only an additional $1.5 million would be available in round two, which will open in the next day or so. City funds are being spent based on an application process within the city that a division requests CARES funds justifying how they will be used to help prevent, prepare, and respond to the impacts of the public health care emergency. These are reviewed by department directors and then sent to the comptroller's office, where comptroller's office, legal department, and the mayor's office form a committee to review and authorize spending of these proceeds. Currently, the city has authorized spending for a variety of issues, a lot of them related to IT, some additional improvements to city facilities to help prevent the spread of the coronavirus disease as well. The interlocal cooperative agreement with the county, which is also part of your consideration this evening, would allow the city to use up to $3 million of the county's coronavirus relief funds and reimburse the city for grants awarded under the City Business and Nonprofit Grant Program. Do you have any questions regarding either of these requests this evening?
I know there were several questions in the work session. Did anybody have any additional questions or?
Jerry, I have a quick question, if you could.
Yeah.
Lisa, will you, words matter, and you use the word for-profit businesses.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking small businesses that might be an LLC, that might be an S corporation. We're not talking those that are distributing stocks and those kind of things. Is that, or it could be, I guess, but I want to make sure that we are not, words matter, and I think people might get hung up on the for-profit word.
These are all local businesses within Ogden City, and they have to qualify under the business guidelines approved by council on June 23rd.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, well, for this item, we do have a public hearing. I don't know if any new folks have joined the call. In case they'd like to comment. I don't see any new additions. So if you'd like to comment for the public hearing, please feel free to raise your hand in the Zoom meeting. And then remember, this is for this item only, and we'd ask you to state your name for the record and keep your comments to 3 minutes. I guess I should say it's for both items. That's what I should say.
Sorry.
The budget amendment and the interlocal agreement. Yes, go ahead.
Seeing no movement, I propose we close the public hearing.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember White and a second by Vice Chair Blair to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. So now I'd be happy to entertain any motions unless anybody has any other discussion.
Chair, I make a motion that we adopt both fiscal year 2020, CARES Act grant funding, fiscal year 2020 and 2021 budget amendment, and interlocal agreement.
I don't know if we have to do it two separate ones since they're listed separately.
Probably.
I mean,
sorry, they're two separate actions. The first is an ordinance, the second a resolution.
Thank you.
So I amend my motion to say that we adopt the fiscal year 2021 budget amendment, proposed ordinance 2020-40.
Perfect.
I second it.
So I have a motion by Councilmember White, a second by Councilmember Stevens to adopt proposed ordinance 2020-40. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer? Oh, never mind.
Excused himself, yeah.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Chaburka?
Aye, and that passes. Now if someone would like to make any suggestions about the interlocal agreement, that would be great.
If there's no further comment, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we adopt Resolution 20-25, authorizing the interlocal agreement with Hooper County.
Second.
So the motion by Vice Chair Blair and a second by Councilmember White to adopt the proposed Resolution 2020-25. This is also a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Chaburka?
Aye, and that passes. Thank you, everyone.
Chair, if I could just make a comment. Thank you for the administration and staff that is trying to manage this. The CARES funding is very difficult as far as when it's coming, which tranche it's in, what can we use it for, and I just really appreciate everybody's ability to maneuver through this, and it is really, really valuable money to get into the hands of our local businesses. So I really appreciate what administration's doing in managing this money. So thank you.
Agreed, yeah. And a fast turnaround time for everything, it seems like. Okay, great. Now, Clint Spencer, a senior planner with planning, is going to be with us for quite a few reports from the Planning Commission. The first item on the schedule is for zone text amendment for accessory apartments in the Central Business District, or the CBD zone. Welcome, Clint.
Thank you. Good evening, and I will be with you for a little bit here. I appreciate the consideration that the council's taken so far tonight in the meeting. There have been some interesting discussions and recognitions, and I appreciate all of that. That being said, it's, like I said, it's my privilege to be here. In place of Greg Montgomery, our thoughts are with him and his family this time, but that being said, I'll move ahead with the presentations that we have before us tonight. The first item up from the Planning Commission in terms of consideration is to amend the ordinance to allow accessory apartments for existing single-story buildings in the CBD zone. So just in terms of a definition and kind of what we're looking at doing in this ordinance revision, currently residential uses are permitted in the zone. However, the ordinance specifies that those can only take place above a commercial building or a commercial space. So it kind of takes out of consideration single-story buildings for any kind of accessory apartment or living or residential living quarters. So the restrictions are that that there are several single-story commercial buildings in the CBD zone, and the ordinance limits where those limits the residential uses currently to spaces have to be specifically above those commercial spaces. So the reasons for the ordinance is to allow some options of reuse for downtown existing buildings, and this would change the ordinance to not limit residential to just above first floor commercial uses, but allow them on first floor commercial uses as well. So that being said, in terms of consistency with the general plan, this first provision here where it talks about providing for horizontal and vertical mixed-use development in specific areas of the downtown. So we look at that as providing ground floor mixed use in terms of, and as well as vertical mixed use developments. And then new development should embody sound urban form and respect the context of Ogden's already built environment. As I said, we have several buildings that would qualify for this type of provision, and there are some benefits to it as we go through the presentation here. So does it restrict the plan attainment? As we look at allowing these accessory apartments in these one-story commercial areas, it does create a 24-hour downtown presence. It provides additional housing options, and then also provides some options for commercial buildings that are declining in terms of how much commercial space that is required to run a business. And this would not change the exterior of those buildings, but it would retain the architectural character of the single-story buildings that exist in our downtown, and just would add a housing component to those single-story buildings. In terms of ordinance considerations, the plan does encourage downtown development to build up rather than out. So again, this isn't taking into consideration, this isn't encouraging that, but it is allowing existing buildings to take advantage of this provision. And then the ordinance amendment would also support this for new development and require that accessory building units to a main floor use would be above the commercial floor.
Chair, can I ask Clint a question?
Sure.
Does this new ordinance speak to how these residences are accessed?
It doesn't speak specifically to how they're accessed. It allows them to take place, and then the access would be reviewed in a planning. Well, if there were exterior modifications to the building, it would take place during a planning commission revision, or if there were existing uses that were taking place without exterior revisions, it would just take those reviews would be done in a building like a building permit review process, where building code and safety considerations would be taken into consideration as well.
Would it be wise to consider maybe some ways that a residence might be accessed that wouldn't be appropriate, and list them as such? I don't know what they'd be, but I can tell you that I think it might be a problem if the building was modified in such a way to look like a residence from the outside. And I also wonder if people are going to be wanting to access their residence through the retail space every time. That way, if they have company, how does that work? So,
I'm not exactly sure what the building code requires for that, but I don't think that they could have a shared access through a retail space. I think they would be required to have their own access. Maybe they install another exterior door with a dedicated hallway that leads to their accessory apartment, something along those lines. As I mentioned, in terms of appearance, any modification in the CBD zone for exterior alterations would go through a planning commission review, and it would be reviewed with the CBD ordinance regulations that we have now in place that protect that exterior appearance. to make sure that nothing inappropriate or out of character occurs in the downtown. We would be looking at encouraging folks to utilize existing accesses to the building and not make exterior modifications for these accessory apartments. I think that in terms of trying to protect every provision of how these units are accessed, I'm fairly confident that there are some building code requirements that in place that protect that. But other than that, I do think that, well, as I stated, the provision of having to go through a planning commission review for any exterior modifications to the building to make sure it takes place is safe and is also in character with the downtown would be required, and that would be reviewed at that point.
Yeah, I should have brought this up before. I do have concern if somebody's trying to access their residence through the retail space. I think that might be inappropriate, and we ought to list that in the ordinance as such. But it's probably too late to do that for tonight if we were going to add that.
I think too, I guess I would wonder, there'd probably be some liability issues for the business owner or, something like that.
Those are the things I was kind of concerned about. And I haven't really let it marinate enough to where I really have a concrete objection, but it just doesn't, it feels like there's maybe something that's just kind of half-baked about this still.
Hey, Councilman Heyer, I know when we built our store, we put an apartment above our store, and we had looked about renting it out or having someone live above it, and there is limitations on how they can get access, stuff like that. So I believe I don't know if we're in the CBD district, but I know when we looked into it, ours didn't qualify because it didn't. We would have had to put an own separate entrance, an own separate lock, stuff like that on it. So
yeah, I think you're in a C zone. I don't think you're in the CBD.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. I just wanted to make sure that was there. That's my concern. So.
Yep.
I am fairly confident in terms of building code that they do have to have a separate entrance to the building. But that's something I could follow up on and revisit if needs be.
Okay, thanks. Sorry to distract.
Not a problem.
That's our job. That's our job, right, Councilmember Heyer? Distract.
Chair, can I ask a question also?
Please.
I understand by this, and I appreciate going through and trying to protect the character not only of the buildings but also the downtown. But I wonder, Clint, are you going to review what the parking is going to look like? Whether that changes at all in this process or not? How does that work with the parking?
So my understanding is that there's no additional parking that's required with this provision.
So what's there is going to stay then.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So typically, businesses in the CBD, they would. They all, because of how everything was built. Obviously, parking has been taking place, or the way that development's taking place. It just we haven't required additional parking for. For commercial uses that take place in those buildings, and I think that would be the same for these accessory apartments as well.
So, what is the parking space in that area that we're talking about?
So the CBD zone is generally between 27th and the river, and I'd say Wall to Washington, kind of in that area, generally speaking. So, is that what you're referring to?
Is it 1.5 spaces?
It could be. So in the CBD zone, it could be one space per unit, per residential unit.
Residential, okay. But I guess if it's a commercial space, am I understanding your question right, Councilmember Stevens? If it's a commercial space, there's particular parking requirements, right?
Yeah, and so another provision that you could, you could probably think about as well is we do have shared parking provisions So where, in a ground floor accessory apartment that shares a use with a commercial use, during the day that parking space that's being utilized for the residential unit is likely, other in another location. Maybe they're working somewhere else, or they're doing business in another place, and that parking space is left unoccupied during the day for the commercial use. And then when the commercial use closes down during the day, then that residential parking space becomes available again for whomever is living in the residence. So we do have a provision for reduced parking for those kinds of shared parking occurrences.
Do we need that information in the ordinance going forward?
That's already in the ordinance itself, and so I don't think that we would need to include it in this. That would be redundant, I think.
Right. Thank you, Clint.
You're welcome. Okay.
I have another quick question, Chair.
Yes.
I don't think the ordinance speaks to this, but is there a percentage of what can be residential versus commercial, or did you define a percentage of square footage or anything like that? I mean, I'm reading the ordinance and it doesn't seem like it, but was there anything talked about?
I don't think in the ordinance it specifies the size of the accessory apartment.
I mean, it only talks about the number of dwellings and parking, not necessarily the size. I just wondered.
If I remember the work session, there was not that many buildings that this would even apply to. So I think when they talked about a percentage, it wasn't really necessary because there aren't that many buildings that this would even apply to.
Yeah.
And I guess I just want to clarify. I feel like Councilmember White, you were saying a percentage within one building, or were you talking about overall percentage out of the whole zone?
Within one building. So if you have a 10,000 square foot building and the first 1,000 square feet is commercial, but that 9,000 extra is residential. I just wondered if any discussion was around that or not.
I think generally speaking, I mean, I would think that the better use or the highest and best use for these buildings would be primarily commercial with a smaller accessory type of apartment or living space. And I think folks are probably going to get higher rents for commercial versus residential for sure. Any other questions, or should we keep plugging along here?
Sounds good.
Okay. All right, so there have been a few questions that we'll go through and kind of answer here. First question is about the applicability to converted houses in the downtown. So these accessory apartment provisions only could occur in commercial buildings. So if there's a non-conforming residential building, it would not be able to incorporate an additional commercial space. This would only apply to commercial buildings. And then there was a question of taxation in the work session. So this is just an example, this square here. So say this is one commercial building. So in terms of taxation, the county looks at it as an accessory apartment is taxed at 55%, and then the commercial space is taxed at 100%. Now that accessory apartment space can fluctuate. It can be larger or smaller, and that space, as that space fluctuates, so does the overall taxation of the entire property. So, as the accessory apartment gets smaller, then the commercial tax, the commercial space would be taxed at 100%, and that would be more of a portion of the tax than the accessory apartment is. There was also a question in the work session today in terms of rental versus non-rental. And as I contacted the county today, those two are taxed at the same rate. So whether it's rented or not rented, it's still at 55% on a residential use in a commercial zone. As Commissioner Heyer said, there are limited buildings in the downtown that could take advantage of this provision. There's 95 single-story buildings in the CBD, and only 40 of those could logically add a unit based on design or use. The other 55 are not likely because of the use and existing design. So, and of those 40, how many are really going to take advantage of it? That's yet to be seen, I guess. But so in terms of recommendation from the Planning Commission, it was recommended for approval 8-1. The nay vote was Commissioner Safeston regarding not requiring parking for accessory apartments in the CBD. So if there's any other questions, I'd be glad to answer them now.
Chair, I have one question to ask Clint.
Yes.
I'd like to go back to the taxation, Clint, and just go with clarification. I understand what you said is that the residential would be taxed at 55% and commercial 100%. If we kept it as totally commercial, are we missing any revenue that could come in if we turn to residential? Are the revenues that we're missing for that process?
So I imagine that the tax revenue, if there was an accessory apartment, tax revenue from that building would be decreased a little bit. However, the provision in this instance is to promote reuse of commercial spaces that aren't being taken advantage of right now, or that perhaps, as I mentioned before, I think that the rents for commercial space is going to be a lot higher than the rents for an accessory apartment. And so I think people, if they could rent the entire commercial space out and utilize it commercially, then that's what would occur. However, if they have a commercial space that doesn't need the entire building and then it can utilize an additional portion for an accessory apartment, then that this amendment would allow for that to take place as well. So they could make better utilization of the property, and really kind of make the most of what they have.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Okay, so I just have really one quick question. If I had a commercial building, and could I turn the whole thing into a residential building? A residential, as long as I had enough parking spaces for everyone?
So you could do, you could turn a commercial building into a residential unit. So there's two ways that residential takes place in the CBD. The first is through this accessory apartment provision that we're talking about, or if you take a building and you have more than 3 units in a building, then if you convert that commercial space to residential, then you do need to find parking for that building before that can be approved. And then again, that would go through the CBD site plan analysis to determine any exterior modifications to the building for that use. With the amendment tonight, the accessory apartment can only take place when it's shared with a commercial space. So it would be one accessory apartment and one commercial space shared on the same main floor level in a commercial building.
Clint, are there any petitioners that are waiting for this ordinance to be passed? Or
not that I'm aware of, no.
I think we had asked Greg that too, and I don't believe he thought there was any.
I think this is a provision that we kind of realized on our own that was maybe make better utilization of some of these commercial spaces that weren't being used to their full potential in the downtown, and kind of leveling the playing field a little bit. I think there might have been an instance that came up with a property owner at some point, and then that kind of kickstarted all this.
Another thing that kind of comes to mind, though, is, usually in a residence, we require ingress, egress windows. Commercial buildings aren't really known for their hospitability to lots of windows that would work for a resident. Do those standards still apply?
Yeah, absolutely. We want to make sure that any of these, as accessory apartments take place in the CBD and these single-story buildings, we're trying to make a big push just in terms of safety. We want all of our residences to be safe. We're undertaking a few initiatives right now to improve the safety of all the living units in Ogden, to make sure that they're safe, that they're up to code, and that we're not putting people in harm's way by allowing them to utilize these spaces. So I see somebody coming in to the city and wanting to do this, and they would have to go through a building permit process. And part of their rental license agreement as well would be to require a building safety inspection. Our building folks would go in and make sure that there's appropriate egress and all that kind of all those safety provisions to make sure that that these spaces are safe and hospitable.
So those buildings that you showed in your slideshow, they didn't look like they would accommodate that kind of thing. Were they just there for, that one up top right? That one on the corner perhaps, but any of those ones down the street, would they even work?
Potentially, when we'd have to look at, the overall layout of the property, how they're accessed and where their windows might be and all that, where that might take place. It's going to be on a case-by-case review. And as I mentioned, if there were modifications that needed to take place for this kind of use in a commercial building, then it would have to go through that CBD ordinance review to make sure that it was in character with the building, and then as well as the building inspection to make sure that the unit was safe.
Okay. I think I'm overthinking this, so I'm going to shut up now.
Yeah, they could have like skylights or something too, wouldn't necessarily have to be a window with a view outdoors to the street. A little daylight in there. Any other comments before we take some public input? Great. Not sure, Brandon, if you have any thoughts. There's one hand up. I don't think there's anybody new though. So this is a time for public input for this item only. So please state your name for the record and keep your comments to 3 minutes.
Good evening, Council Angel Castillo. I would like to, again, commend the planning department at looking at this particular piece, and I think it's important to understand the thought behind it. What they're doing is something that is akin with the National Incremental Development Alliance, small local business ownership. And I think the story of this is you have these smaller units, only about 40 of them, that are going to be able to add an apartment. And why that's important with regards, if you had a donut shop owner who wants to grow his business and he has a small accessory apartment within the shop, it allows him to save money. It allows him to live where he works. It's also super convenient when you wake up early as a donut owner. But it's really important that we take the opportunity to allow for housing where we can, and especially to build wealth. Small business owners, that the way that you get there to develop wealth is through property ownership. And you might be renting this particular business, but if you have an opportunity to live there and work there while you build your business, you're going to find that path to home ownership a lot sooner than you would. I'm asking you to trust your planning commission. I'm asking you to trust your planning department and the fact that they've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's, making sure that it's safe. And I highly encourage you to vote to support this, to allow small businesses to have owners that may have apartments within their businesses. And I'd also like you to consider that if the business is owner occupied, as far as the apartment is concerned, maybe not having a parking requirement for them since they're there and it's not an additional tenant being on board. So thank you for your time, and I hope that you vote to pass this.
Thanks. Any other public input? I'm not seeing any other hands raised, so it's not an official public hearing, so we don't have to close it. Unless there's more discussion or questions, I'm happy to entertain a motion.
Chair, I propose that we adopt ordinance 2020-36, amending the code to allow accessory apartments.
I second.
We have a motion by Councilmember White and a second by Councilmember Lopez to adopt ordinance 2020-36. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Chaburka?
Aye, and that passes. Thanks so much for your due diligence on that item, Clint. I know we asked a lot of questions and had us go back and research a few things, so I do appreciate it. I really appreciate the idea of, seeing how this works, and I do appreciate that we're not going to force someone to have to, provide a petition or apply for a petition or an exception. So thanks for the proactiveness of the planning department.
Chair, I just also want to say, I was one of the people that asked them to go back and look at this and just to find out exactly what that would mean as far as a financially or fiscal part of that. And so I know that many of you were ready to pass this last week, or last couple of weeks. So I thank you, Clint, and your staff that you went out and looked. So thank you.
I'll pass that on to Greg. Thank you.
I appreciate your questions, Councilmember White. So, all right, Clint, we're up next with the proposed subdivision ordinance amendments, the roadway classifications and streetlights.
Okay. Well, after listening to Angel Castillo, all I can think of right now is donuts. So
I know, I was sort of thinking the same thing. If I lived in my own donut shop, I would not be able to leave.
no,
I have been a donut owner before. I've owned them. I don't keep them very long, so I don't own them very long. But
that'd be a bad situation for me. I'd be buying a lot of extra pens. Okay, so this next ordinance amendment has to do with basically bringing in line the transportation master plan terms and provisions in line with our subdivision ordinance. So subdivisions are obviously the building block of our development. They set the land patterns for circulation and utility locations, and they anticipate both community, local, and regional needs. You can see in the diagram several different types of building blocks here for subdivisions. So the need for these amendments is the transportation master plan was approved I believe last year. It had some standards in it that we need to make sure coincide with each other in terms of terminology. There was some state legislature passed as well. So in terms of language, currently the subdivision ordinance has three categories for streets: minor streets, a collector street, and a major street. And the plan language for the transportation master plan calls a minor street a local street. There's two types of collector streets and then arterial streets for these major streets in the subdivision ordinance. So the amendment would include three different types of streets: a local street type, a collector street type, and an arterial street type. In terms of dimensions and and size considerations, as well as looking at traffic movement, the other provision is look at what's underneath the road. Where, how much space are we providing for utilities to occur? Where do those occur? What are the sizes of the right-of-way that we're looking at to make sure that we can service all the residents that need these types of services as we develop and adopt new subdivisions. So in terms of a local street, there's two types. These are currently in place. One is 56 feet of right-of-way. The other is 60 feet of right-of-way. And there's basically the difference between those two is one has a sidewalk on one side, one has a sidewalk on both sides. And so we'd just be looking at what types of uses are served by these local streets and what type should be installed with new subdivisions as they come through. Then you have a collector street, which so it's requiring a 72-foot right-of-way, which replaces a provision for a 66 to 80 feet, so making more specific regulations for these collector streets to occur. And then an arterial street where you have a 100-foot right-of-way with 74 feet of pavement. In addition, we're also looking at adding a provision for alleys. In this picture down below, you can see where the major streets occur. Let's see if I can get my laser pointer here. Maybe. So you can see where these major streets occur, and then these smaller streets here are alleys. And these would service garages that are rear loaded for these for this type of subdivision and neighborhood to take place. So you'd have these local streets that feed into these arterial streets. The arterial streets, as they're being recommended anyways, would be all concrete, and so we wouldn't have any utilities underneath those. So all the utilities would still run out in the public street, in the public right-of-way, and then these alleyways would be just in private ownership to allow this circulation to take place, where you can have rear-loaded garages and then have all of your homes face the street in the fashion that's kind of shown below. This would kind of just allow some flexibility in terms of development, especially maybe some infill opportunities that could take advantage of these types of uses and developments. Cul-de-sacs would be limited to a maximum of 750 feet. I don't think that we have a regulation in place right now in our subdivision ordinance anyways. And then it would revise the pavement width to 96 feet with some possible reductions based on some factors and adopted processes. And then in terms of there are variations for special consideration or for special conditions that either increase or reduce the widths of these streets that would need to be approved by the city engineer, planning commissioner, and the mayor as well. So just giving some additional flexibility. Another provision includes street lighting. These would take place at half blocks or intersections, or on a curve that is difficult to see around. Those types of situations, the developer would be responsible to install these street lights along new roadways that are part of a subdivision process. So that being said, the Planning Commission did recommend approval unanimously, 9-0. If there's any questions, I can answer what I can, hopefully.
Any questions? Doesn't look like it at this moment. This item also, we can take some public input if anybody would like to make any public comment regarding this item, the roadway classifications and streetlights. Not seeing any hands at this time. I'm going to talk very slowly just in case. It's really hard to read the crowd. Great, so unless there's any more discussion about this item, I'd be happy to entertain any motions.
Chair, I make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2020-41, proposed subdivision ordinance amendments.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember White and a second by Councilmember Heyer to approve proposed ordinance, sorry, I lost track of it, 2020-41. And this is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Heyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Chaburka?
Aye, and that passes. The next item on the proposed subdivision ordinance amendments is public meetings and small subdivisions.
Well, moving right along, this is a provision that we're really trying to encourage simplification and saving some time for both city staff and for people that want to do these small lot subdivisions. We're hoping to make the process a little easier, a little less expensive, and a little more streamlined. So just a couple of terms to go over. A subdivision, of course, is when you take one piece of land and create more than one piece of land. So whether it's 1 or 3 or 10. And then you have a subdivision plat, and this is a recorded document dedicating and providing lots for sale, as you can see in this image here down below. And within these, within the city, we have lots and parcels. A lot is typically included on a platted development. And this would, once a lot is approved, that it is approved for development of some sort. And then a parcel isn't necessarily on a plat, but it could also be defined by what we call a meets and bounds description. So where somebody just has a lot that was created at the beginning of time, so to speak, and they want to piece that up. They don't have to go through a subdivision process. They can hire a surveyor to do a legal meets and bounds where those property lines are defined by a surveyor, and then that's recorded at the county to create that new lot. So in terms of consideration, state law has done away with the requirement for a public hearing for subdivisions, which we are, as a planning staff, I think that we appreciate that. A lot of times in our subdivision process, we'll have a subdivision on our planning agenda with the statement saying that a public hearing will be held to consider that, and then people show up and they think that, oh, this is a public hearing, so I can voice my concern and my opposition to it, and then it can be done away with. However, if a subdivision comes in and it meets all of our ordinances, then we have to approve it, or we're liable to all kinds of lawsuits. So that was always kind of a conflict for folks that didn't necessarily appreciate a new subdivision that did meet all the zoning requirements, and there was really not a whole lot that could be done. That being said, we still would like to have and allow public meetings to take place for public comment. There's a lot of times that the public do have a lot to contribute in terms of living there locally. They can identify ditch problems or unique conditions that the city might not be aware of. That has happened in a handful of situations where in a meeting, something will come up that wasn't reviewed at the time or wasn't that the city wasn't aware of, and then we can go back and address that and make sure that it's taken care of during the process. So we still intend to hold public meetings for people to make comments on, but hopefully that term public comment instead of public hearing will give a better understanding of what is taking place in the meeting especially in terms of whether or not, public clamor can overturn and basically deny a subdivision from going in. So a small subdivision creates less than 10 lots, and we see these take place quite often in the city. Right now, any small subdivision is required to go through a planning commission process, which takes up a lot of time, like I said, for staff, as well as for the applicant. They're required to go to hire a surveyor and an engineer to draft up a plat that would allow them to subdivide the lot. This is when people do something as simple as what's shown here on the screen, and they just want to create a small lot that meets the zoning ordinance. These amendments would help that to take place so that it's not as difficult or as expensive or as timely, or as, I guess, it doesn't take as much time as it currently does to get something like this approved. It would still go, these small subdivisions would still be required, or they still are required to go through a public hearing process, and that hearing process would be through the mayor's meeting rather than a planning commission meeting. So it could, the notification, I believe, is for a week instead of, sometimes the planning commission can be as far out as 45 days from the time a person makes an application. So in terms of adjusting a lot with utility easements, this can take place in a couple of ways. So anytime you record a subdivision, a recorded subdivision with recorded easements, anytime you amend those easements, it does have to go through a planning commission process. And that would, whether you're amending one easement or several or vacating an easement, that would have to go through a planning commission process. But if these lots are not part of a subdivision and they just have an easement recorded over them, the small subdivision process would allow them to not have to go to planning commission to move these. These public utility easements would be changed into what we call now a municipal utility easement that gives the municipalities a little more control over what can take place with those. And then those can be converted to municipal utility easements and moved if the plat has not been recorded as part of a recorded subdivision. So we feel that the provisions that we're making tonight, they do improve the process. As I mentioned before, there's a meets and bounds type of description for properties where you describe the length and direction of property lines, or a record of survey map is another way that folks can create these small subdivisions. It does save them quite a bit of time, from anywhere from 18 to 45 days, if not more. And then it saves staff time as well in terms of having to write up planning commission reports and doing presentations, and it reduces costs for everybody. So that being said, the planning commission did recommend approval 7-0 for this amendment. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them now.
Thanks so much, Clinton. I certainly appreciate anything that is proactive and saves time and energy and effort. Is there anything you can foresee that would be a negative to anyone by these changes, or would impact anybody and cause them an inconvenience in any way?
It's hard to think of a negative impact on this. I think that we've dealt with enough of these small subdivisions, and going back to somebody and saying, hey, I know you only have a 3-lot subdivision, but you've got to go through this prolonged subdivision process. That's, those are the things that are kind of difficult for us, and that's what we're trying to, help. I think when you get a larger subdivision, obviously those kinds of things are going to have a little more impact, and folks might want to comment on those or have a better understanding of what's taking place. But for these smaller subdivisions, I don't think that that there's a whole lot of negative sides to what we're proposing in terms of amendment. They still do have to go through they still don't be noticed, and they will still have to go through the mayor's meeting, but they won't have to go through the planning commission meeting.
Great, thanks. Any other questions or comments for Clint? I'm not seeing any green boxes. Great, so we'd be happy to take any public input on this item. This is the item for subdivision ordinance amendments for public meetings and small subdivisions. You would just raise your hand in the Zoom meeting. I'm not seeing any movement there, so I'd be happy to entertain any motions unless anybody has any comments.
Chair, I'll make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2020-42.
Second.
A motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Vice Chair Blair to adopt ordinance 2020-42. And this is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez,
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski,
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens,
Aye.
Councilmember White,
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair,
Aye.
Chair Chaburka.
Aye, and that passes. And the final item for you tonight, Clint, is the proposed zone text amendment for allowing online auto sales in the C3 zone.
All right. Well, we've moved right along, and I appreciate your consideration and questions. So the last item tonight is consideration to amend the ordinance, the C3, specifically to allow online car sales in that zone. Some background information for this is we have had a couple of these online car sales that have come to us, and there is an interest for this to occur in the C3 zone, and this would provide and give some business owners options for use of a vacant commercial space or some extra parking as well. So right now, in the commercial zones, the sale of new and used cars is not allowed in the C1 or C2. It's only allowed in the C3 zone. And then used car lots are prohibited in the C1 and C2, and they're conditional in the C3 zone. So this amendment, again, would only really take place in the C3 zone and not in either the C1 or C2. With that being said, it doesn't currently, the ordinance doesn't allow for this to take place. As it is. There is a national trend with dealerships, both new and used, where folks want to utilize online sales of cars. I think is a trend that's easily visible. For me, whenever I'm looking for cars, that's the first place I go. I don't usually go and drive around to 100 used car lots to find a new car for us. And so I think that allowing folks to utilize commercial properties certainly satisfies this trend and helps to fill a void that might be present. That being said, we don't want to overburden the C3 zone with these types of uses, and so there are some regulations that we've put in place to make this fit in a little more in character with the zone itself. So automobile sales, online only, are subject to the following conditions. Number one is they can only occur in office spaces. The office space should be located in a commercial building. So these are for only existing commercial buildings. And then the space for vehicles should be on the same lot as the office. Vehicles parked on the site shall not have an attached signage, writing in the windows, or advertising to promote the sale of vehicle. Basically, we want these vehicles to look like they're just being parked there as a normal car. We don't want, the ordinance goes on, and I think we'll touch on it a little bit here. Okay, so the minimum of 3, and that's per state ordinance. If somebody wants to open a used car dealership, they have to have at least 3 designated parking stalls and a maximum of 6 within the CBD or on a certain specific site. Parking stalls should not be used for detailing, maintenance, or repair. So no no fender work or body work or muffler, all that kind of stuff can't occur while the car is parked in the parking lot. And it's only for functioning, operable vehicles ready for retail sales. So as we look at consistency with the general plan and zoning ordinance, it does expand business opportunities, specifically in that C3 zone, which is supported by the general plan. And then in terms of the C3 zone, it provides for the sale and supply of a complete range of retail and wholesale goods. So this would just expand what already exists in the C3 and make that zone a little more open to these types of trend uses. Again, this just goes over the considerations that we have talked about already. So the recommendations being put in, what being proposed by staff is, again, this would only be able to take place in a commercial building. As you can see here, this commercial building. So if somebody wanted to occupy one of this commercial space with an office and then have between 3 and 6 parking stalls outside, they could do that. The concern regarding excessive numbers of these types of businesses located in one area to appear as a used car lot. So the space for the vehicles should be on the same side as the office. Vehicles parked on the site shall not have any attached signage, writing on the windows, or anything indicating that they are for sale, essentially making them look like they're just cars parked at a commercial office space or a commercial site. Again, this kind of goes over some of the regulations we've talked about in terms of what the state requires for parking for used cars vehicles. The ordinance does specify a maximum of 6, and the appearance of those vehicles has to be in line with a regular looking car that would otherwise be parked at a commercial site. Again, not allowing any of these types of uses, detailing, car washing, car repair to take place while the car is parked there. And then none of these junk vehicles would be allowed to be stored on the site as well. They would have to be in good repair, and again, just look and appear as a regular vehicle would look and appear. So some of these uses that take place for used car online car sales, sometimes people don't even require any parking stalls on their site, even though they have parking stalls available. A lot of them will just kind of be the middleman. They'll have cars delivered by truck, and they just need an office space to satisfy state requirements. And this would really, the provisions that we're requiring would not create something out of character with the zone that's already, that we're not making something that would be incompatible or out of character, we feel. But we're providing for an additional use in the zone. So that being said, the Planning Commission did recommend unanimous approval for this type of use in the C3 zone. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer what I can.
Great, thanks. Any questions for Clint? Not seeing any. So I'd be happy to take some public input if anybody has any input for this particular item, allowing online auto sales in the C3 zone. Please raise your hand in the Zoom meeting to do so. Not seeing any hands, so unless there's more discussion on this item, I'd be happy to consider a motion.
Chair, this is Councilmember Lopez. I would love to make a motion to adopt proposed ordinance 2020-43 if there is no more comment.
I'll second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Lopez and a second by Councilmember Heyer to adopt proposed ordinance 2020-43. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Nadolski.
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens.
Aye.
Councilmember White.
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer.
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair.
Aye.
Chair Chaburka.
Aye, and that passes. Thanks again so much for your time, Clint.
Thanks, Clint. Greg, our best.
Will do. Thank you for your consideration, and I'm going to go get that donut now.
Oh dear. Great. Well, up next we have reports from administration. We're happy to invite Taylor Nielsen and Justin Anderson of engineering. The first item on our list is engineering standards, public right-of-way, as-built projects, and street lighting.
Yes, thank you, Chair Chaburka, and we will move this along and make this brief. Tonight we're bringing to you some engineering standards that need to be updated for your approval. So I'll turn the time over to Taylor Nielsen, the Assistant City Engineer.
Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies, I was having trouble finding the unmute button, so hopefully I'm sharing the right screen with everyone. We appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, very good, thank you. No, we appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening with you, Madam Chair and members of the council, and of course Mayor Caldwell and Mr. Johnson. We are grateful for the time that we have to go through some of these standards. We're also grateful for Clint in his presentation. He actually has presented a couple of the items that are going to be consistent with some of the items that we will present to you tonight, which include some of our engineering standards updates and some of the site triangles. So we've coordinated with planning in quite an extensive effort. Clint did a great job really laying out a lot of that information. And so some of this stuff will just be a repeat of that information. So we will try and go through that. And Madam Chair, if it's actually okay, I'd like to just present all three of these different motions together, and then happy to answer any questions in a one-by-one basis if that's all right to proceed that way.
I think that's perfectly fine. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. So the first item that we wanted to note in adopting engineering standards, the state of Utah came out and amended some recent code back in 2017 that said anytime that we adopt a land use code or anything else, we're required to have a public meeting and have a public hearing in regard to some of these standards and these changes. In 2019, they further changed some of that legislation to indicate that only a legislative body, such as a city council, was able to adopt some of these land use regulations. So that would be consistent with some of these engineering standards, like some of the items Clint had talked about earlier, which would be subdivisions, roadway dedications, and other things of that nature. And so as we've been going through and trying to make amendments and updates to our engineering standards, that's why we're bringing them back before this body, is to make sure that we are being consistent and following the state laws as outlined. So one of the changes that we were proposing, the old language used to read that the city engineer was authorized to adopt these same design standards and changes. We are now proposing that language changes to that the city engineer shall propose for adoption by the city council the same regulations, design standards, and everything else. Again, some of which have been proposed to you tonight in some of the other sections. And so that's one of the first changes. The next change that we're putting in this same section is the adoptions of codes that are similar to what most people understand as like the International Building Code, Plumbing Code, Fire Code. For our engineering projects, our public work projects, we have a couple of different standards. Of those is the American Public Works Association, also the American Water Works Association, and a book that we've become very familiar with for everything we do is the Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. We call it the MUTCD. So these are three different standards or volumes that we just wanted to adopt to make sure that we were consistent with our construction documents, our standards, our construction requirements, and everything else to ensure as people came and built in Ogden that they had some industry consistency that we'd be able to work with and work through. And these have been very helpful, especially for us to ensure that we're applying correct and the most current standards and getting the best product for our city. One of the other requirements we added was for as-built plans. These are the final plans because we know construction plans always have some changes in the field. And even when we have developers coming in and installing just connections in the roadway, whether that be water and sewer, we wanted to make sure we ended up with plans as those all get wrapped up and finished. And then one of the items that Clint had touched on was the street light installation. And we were going with the same language and code consistent to what the planning group has already discussed with you about. And so that was just another item we wanted to make sure we were consistent in the chapter with the engineering standards. The other one is you might have seen this picture a little bit earlier, but this was the roadway cross-section standard also that Clint showed you. We worked together quite a bit with the planning group to ensure that we are consistent across the board in all of our standards, and that we make sure that we have the best set of items that will not only move the most amount of traffic, but also will ensure that we have great and wonderful infrastructure for many years to come. One of the most important parts, as you can see within that dotted line, is we call it a water, wastewater utility space. Everyone remembers that as stuff goes underground, they always seem to forget about it, and we're the ones that always get to dig it up and find it. So we wanted to make sure that we, in the utilities that we manage and take care of, are able to have enough room, especially in the future, to expand or go wherever else we need to do, because unfortunately water lines get old and they need to be replaced. But we did also include some standards for winter work, trying to really limit open construction in the winter, and same with we're trying to ensure that we're again being good stewards of our roadway and following fire code to make sure everything remains and maintains safety. Again, another one that Clint had talked about was just some modifications to the site triangle. We just added some engineering language to ensure consistency for maybe a couple of the different corners that aren't always addressed by a measurement setback, but that was just to ensure that we were able to cover our bases in case that we had one of those small adjustments or changes or something that maybe needed to be addressed in a way for engineering safety. And that allowed us the ability to go in and review those corners that were maybe left, which was potentially a small handful. Probably some of the larger updates that we had within these standards are our stormwater updates. There were some new permit language that came out from the Department of Environmental Quality in relation to water quality. And that's something we take very seriously here in Ogden, and we wanted to make sure that we were able to update our language to be consistent with not only our standards, but some of our ordinances as well. And so we have updated our standards to be consistent with the new MS4 permit requirements. And we've also added some new requirements for rivers, streams, other connections, and different items of stormwater to ensure that we are keeping our rivers and all of our other local bodies of water beautiful and nice, and especially a nice place for kids that they'll want to come down and play in. We also added a requirement for water treatment devices. We updated some of our detention and retention facilities along with injection wells. On your screen right now, you're seeing a picture of Grand Avenue. That was one of the most recent projects that we had done, and that has some low impact design that we put in that road, and that was even prior to the state adopting some of these standards. So we were trying to show that in Ogden, we were ahead of the game, ahead of the curve, and understanding the importance of bringing some of these improvements and ensuring that we were not only bringing beautiful streets, but also taking the water quality very seriously and ensuring that we get a good quality product for the city for many years to come. We also, per the new permit language and for some of the items from the state, they wanted us to add in a dispute resolution because LID is a new system, and I know some of the developers were concerned that everyone was going to have a different form of standards, and they just wanted to have the ability or the opportunity to come in and be able to resolve some disputes and some other items. And so that is all of our presentation going through the three different items. We are happy to go through any questions or items that we had or questions that may have come up.
Thanks, and I really appreciate all these pictures of that construction of that's 20th Street right there, 21st? I can't remember which street.
20th Street, good eye.
20th, yeah,
Yep.
20th. I walk across that quite a bit watching that giant project. It's so huge. Any questions for Taylor or Justin?
Chair, if I could just make a comment.
Yes.
I just like to thank our engineering division of being proactive and looking and trying to plan for the future. I just enjoyed their presentation tonight, and I think this shows that we're trying to be more proactive here in Ogden.
Thank you, Councilmember Stevens.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Good job on the presentation, Taylor.
Thank you, sir.
We have 3 separate items here that we have for consideration, so we'll have to vote on them separately. Unless there's any other comments or discussion, I'd be happy to entertain a motion on the first item.
Chair, I'll make a motion that we adopt proposed ordinance 2020-46.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Vice Chair Blair to adopt proposed ordinance 2020-46. This is a roll call vote.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Chaburka?
Aye, and that passes. Thank you.
Chair, I would make a motion to adopt proposed ordinance 2020-44.
I second it.
Thank you. We have a motion by Councilmember Lopez and a second by Councilmember Stevens to adopt proposed ordinance 2020-44. And this is a roll call vote.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Councilmember Heyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Chaburka?
Aye, and that passes. Thank you.
Chair, I'll make a motion that we adopt ordinance 2020-45.
Second.
Thank you. And we have a motion by Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember White to adopt proposed ordinance 2020-45. This is also a roll call vote.
Councilmember Heyer?
Aye.
Councilmember Lopez?
Aye.
Councilmember Nadolski?
Aye.
Councilmember Stevens?
Aye.
Councilmember White?
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair?
Aye.
Chair Chaburka?
Aye, and that passes. Thank you. And I just really want to thank the recorder. I feel like I haven't had much of a job tonight. I think you have to do roll call on every item. So thank you so much. Now's the opportunity to address the council regarding any concerns or ideas on any topic. This is the public comments portion of the meeting. So if you're on the Zoom meeting, we'd be happy to have you comment. I don't believe there's anybody new to the meeting, but yeah, you would just raise your hand on the Zoom meeting and then state your name for the record and take just 3 minutes, please.
Hello?
Hi, Heath. How are you?
Hi. Good. Thank you. Sorry, I had trouble unmuting again. Hi, everyone. Heath Sato, Ogden resident. Last council meeting, I was happy the mayor responded to some of my questions. But I had asked if we yet knew how much the Swift building cleanup would cost. And I don't know if he misheard my question or what, but he spoke at length about the building, but never referenced my actual question regarding who is paying for the cleanup. he also asked me to email him about the 24th Street Bridge issue, but before I could, I received a Facebook email from somebody at the Ogden City Council page. And that was immediately following the meeting, and they tried to be helpful. They gave me a contact to reach out to about the bridge issue, and that led me to being given no less than 3 different phone numbers I was told to call, which ended, I'm sure you guys are familiar with this too, which ended in a few voicemails left that were never responded to over the last 2 weeks. I would like to request again that someone with more sway than I have with UDOT please try to find out if or when some real repairs will begin on the bridge. I'm pretty worried about how much further that bridge will deteriorate over this winter given its current state of disrepair. Driving down the street right now, and you'll see quite a bit of debris from the road surface scattered along the shoulder. As to the Swift building question, they stated, the person on the Facebook message from Ogden City Council stated that Brandon Cooper had said, quote, "The city has not yet received a bill from the EPA for cleanup at the Swift building." This feels like it's avoiding my actual question. I would like clarification of what this all means. Could someone specify if this means we expect to receive a bill from the EPA, or we don't even know if we'll receive a bill? I would like to know if we as city taxpayers will be saddled with this cleanup expense that should have been the responsibility of the building's previous owner had this whole mess been handled with greater competence. As always, all I'm asking for is much more transparency from this administration. Please. Thank you.
Thanks, Heath. I lost my Zoom window for a moment. Any other comments? Not seeing any other hands raised. Mayor Caldwell, would you like to make any general comments or respond in any way?
Sure, I have a couple comments. I'd just like to give a huge thank you to the community. As a lot of us know and a lot of us participated in, we had a huge cleanup with a major windstorm, and Jay Louder and his crew did a phenomenal job accommodating a lot of that. We took care of a lot of the communities that surrounded us, and if you've driven by Park Ave, our overflow area for all the green waste and everything else, you'll be enormously impressed and intimidated by all of the things that came out. I personally took 8 truckloads out of my own yard, and it was really accommodating. And we want to thank our Public Works group and our Public Works staff for everything that they've done in the last number of days to clean all the streets up, make sure everything was functional and people could move around. On a couple of the comments that were earlier, Swift building cleanup, it would be nice if we had a really clean, easy way to look at that. They had 88,000 containers of unknown materials, and the EPA is going through that. We believe that the DOD is going to pay for a lot of that, but it's not something that's a really easy thing to do. That was a public safety crisis that I think our engineering department and economic development department stepped in and did a hero's job of working through. That's going to take a little while to get figured out and accounted for, and we'll be very transparent when all of that is available and we put that out. We think that they'll pay for a vast majority of that. So we appreciate that. The 21st Bridge issue, what we're being told is that will be resurfaced next year. And that's a UDOT road. That's not an Ogden City road, but we're very connected with UDOT. We've got great relationships with them, and we've been working through that. Our engineering department's done a great job of figuring out what they're going to do with that, and we want to give that to them. I don't pretend to be an engineer, but that's been on our radar for a long time, and that is something that we'll be very transparent about. But again, I want to thank you to the community. If a lot of you saw what happened yesterday, people came out in droves and cleaned up our parks and cleaned up our public spaces. It was a big issue for us. And it seems like we're doing that every 5 years. And our group of department directors and everyone else really knows how to make this work, get everything functional as quickly as possible. I'd put our team up against anybody in the state right now. I appreciate everything that they've done. They worked tirelessly for the last 7 days to get all of that handled and taken care of and positioned so that it's of the least inconvenience to the community. And we really want to thank all of them for what they've done to put all this together, because these are not easy things to take care of and to manage. So thank you all to all the volunteers that showed up, all the community members that came in, put on their work gloves, went to work, and helped take care of our community. And that's one of the things we talked a lot about is people care about their public spaces, their open spaces. We live in an amazing place, not just for our public spaces, but for the people that live here and want to go to work. And I'm really, really proud of everything everybody did. So thank you very much.
Thanks. Any other comments from council members?
Chair, could I take a few minutes?
Yes, please.
This year, 2020, is not like a normal year. And I'd like to go to the year 2021 and start from there and continue on. But if it was a normal year, I would be making my predictions about Weber State's football team. But again, this is not a normal year. So I first would like to thank my thoughts and prayers go out to Greg and his family. And I hope that they feel what we're thinking about him and his family and the great loss that he had. But Clint did an outstanding job. I mean, we worked him pretty well tonight, but he did a great and an outstanding job. When I was campaigning, I campaigned on an art district, and this 9 rails kind of fulfills that opportunity that we have here in Ogden. We know the importance of arts. We know that the arts add a special environment, character, and opportunities. Those who'd like to share their talents and art with other people, and I'm very mindful of that. I made a suggestion this evening that we look at the 9 rails, but also we look at those and develop a program by which our citizens and others can donate to that project so that they can feel part of the 9 rails project that we have going. And again, on Marshall White Center, I want the Marshall White Center to be a functional center for everyone in Ogden City. Some centers that we could go visit and appreciate, but this has to be a community center, and that's what I'm looking at the present time. That's the objective that I would like to see, is that the Marshall White Center is very important to me, but it's also important to Ogden City as a community center that will address all of our programs and help us all to develop and share our talents with each and every one of us. And that's all I have to say.
Thanks, Councilmember Stevens. You had to make up for a couple weeks, too, not being here. Any other comments?
Chair Chaburka, this is Ben, if I could.
Yes.
Just a quick second to huge props to every employee, every community member and neighbor that helped with the cleanup. Sometimes it might seem like it takes a while, but the fact that we are getting back to life as we knew it before the storm is heroically impressive. So thanks to everybody that helped with that.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Chair, I went to the WACOG meeting yesterday, and I was pretty impressed by all of the help that went from community to community. We reached out to those who needed the help that we specialize in. Others from other communities, Mayor Dandoy from Roy, they didn't get hit very hard, so they pitched in throughout the county and did what they could do. Those stories go on and on. I think it was impressive to hear how we join arms and tackle a problem when it's widespread. I think it makes me proud to live in this area where people are that selfless and look out for each other like they do.
Any other comments? Yeah, well, I definitely, I applaud all the community members as well for sticking it out. And I really applaud those people that survived so many days without electricity. I don't know if I could have made it that many days. And I think just another note for anybody that is really interested in any particular, social service or community interest for the not-for-profits in the area. Not only are the domestic violence calls up, I know that requests for food assistance are also up in the community and other items too. So if there is a not-for-profit or a social service that you're really interested in, I would definitely reach out to see how you might be able to help. There's lots of people that are still being impacted by the pandemic and then also now the hurricane. So it's just a compounded issue in the community. And I thank you all so much for your time. If there's no more other comments, I'm happy to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion to adjourn from Councilmember Heyer and a second by Councilmember Nadolski. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. Well, have a wonderful evening, you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good night.